Toot toot, baby, it's time to ride the Polar Express funk train today as we look at Atari's brand new present at the end of the year. Yes, they've released another game with no fanfare and no hullabaloo. We got Food Fight, Culinary Combat. Do we love it? Do we hate it? Do we think it's weird? Do we think it's mid? Well, we're going to get into this interesting title only for the Atari VCS right now during the Yuletide merriment of funk.
Hola, childs. It's time for Funkmaster V's Getting Hip with the Atari 7800, where Funkmaster V, musician, ghost hunter, hat flipper, pro wrestler, and comedian takes you on a tour of all things cool about the Atari 7800. Are you ready to get your groove on? Because it's about to get funky up in here.
I have never heard of this thing before in my life, but apparently it's been in development for over a year, maybe even longer than that. And it took them a long time to come up with this thing. It's a third-person shooter, which no one in the world would have assumed because, you know, Atari is known for these two-dimensional classics. How does it play? And I gotta tell you, the first thing that came to my mind is this reminds me a lot of Splatoon. I love Splatoon. Now, the gameplay here, pretty much, you're not trying to paint these maps with a bunch of gooey food particles or anything, or sloppy seconds or leftover food or anything like that, even though that would have been pretty interesting. It's pretty much just your straight-up shooter. It's a multiplayer game, and it's available on the Atari VCS right now. They want it to be an online game, which I think is going to be a problem for the Atari VCS fan base. I just don't know how many people, since there's not been a lot of sales with the Atari VCS, are going to be online at any given moment to play games of this nature. It does look pretty okay, but it is really chintzy when it's compared to something like Splatoon. Of course, Splatoon's had 3 iterations to kind of flesh itself out, but this is a decent stab. There's nothing awful looking here. I'm not crazy about the big-headed sprites or anything like that, but there's a lot to do. There's 6 maps. There's 4 different game modes of this multiplayer game. And there's even kind of a single-player mode in this thing that is hit or miss. I don't know. I'm not crazy about this constant jumping up and down, but if you are a completionist, you can kind of flesh out the in-game museum by playing the single-player modes and finding all the missing artwork. That brings me to what I think this game is going to be known for the most. There is a lot of Atari lore, and there's a lot of Atari characters you can talk to. And I'm talking, not only is Bentley Bear in this thing again, by the way, he's a again. I don't know why they're doing that with their #1 mascot. He's supposed to be our Mario, and he was a bad guy in Atari Mania, and now he owns the Crystal Castles arcade, and he's a complete jerk. But whatever. You can actually talk to people who's designed certain Atari games, including Howard Scott Warshaw and even Nolan Bushnell. And Nolan Bushnell is worried that his son is obsessed with the game Polybius. Now, the Polybius arcade game is in this thing, which is nuts. And if you don't know what that is, look that up. But that's basically the game where people thought the government was using arcade games to try to brainwash people and also read the reflexes and read the brains and send them on secret missions. It's crazy. It's strange that it's here, but it's a laugher. But getting back to the main game, the cartoony aspect and the fact that you can add bots kind of makes me feel like this is Timesplitters 2. And the bots are pretty tough, even though occasionally they do glitch out. Like I said, there's 4 different game modes, the best one being King of the Cone, which basically is like a capture the flag type thing where you grab the flag, bring it back to your base, you score a point. Tiebreakers are decided on the math equation of how many times you died versus how many people you killed. And it's also kind of cute. Instead of carrying a flag, you put a big ice cream cone on your head, which brings you back nostalgia-wise to Food Fight, which we were all doing that big dust-up over ice cream originally. The first weapon you pick up kind of sucks, so make sure you upgrade it. There's tons of weapons and different types of guns, or I don't know if they're all guns, but basically you're shooting food at people left and right as the people in Africa cry a single tear. You know, this is a pretty good game. I mean, they've put a lot of work into this, and again, it's so hard not to compare it to Splatoon. Splatoon's a $60 game with millions of people that play it online all the time, and there's constant updates. This is a $14 game. And when we start looking at this thing, we can't really compare this to Splatoon or the Splatoon series. But what this has is a lot of arcade games you can unlock, and a lot of lore. You can earn money and buy costumes, even though most of the costumes are food-based, like chef hats and aprons. So if you're that kind of person, you can spend a lot of time doing the completionist thing, unlocking artwork, unlocking arcade games, knickknacks, tchotchkes, bric-a-brac, doing all that type of thing. How fun all that is, I don't know. The multiplayer game is fun. I had a hard time finding an online game at this point. There's a lot of people that don't even know this exists, but you can set up bot matches. Pretty fun. Okay, I'm going to poo-poo on this thing a little bit. Visually, it's pretty impressive, but it can't hold a candle to Splatoon, even Timesplitters 2, which was a GameCube game. It's just pretty plain Jane. Like I said before, the sound is pretty underwhelming. I wish there were more different types of people you can play as. There's a lot of chefs. In the beginning, to play these one-player modes, you have to pick between Charlie, who's the mascot from the first game, and he's pretty lame, and there's a no-name female counterpart who's never been in a video game that is tough to get excited about. So, it would be cool if we could unlock, like, Pete, since he is a guy who's based in Outlaw, and he's a weapons guy. Or anybody else in the Atari lore would be cool if they could get on the funk train and start throwing food at people's faces. The costumes are all food-based. Apropos, kind of boring. The single-player modes, underwhelming. At the end of the day, I don't know who this game is for. For $14.99, it's worth picking up and playing for just about anybody. But Atari people like 2D games. If you like three-dimensional games and three-dimensional shooters, you'll be playing Call of Duty, Splatoon, Timesplitters, GoldenEye, the list goes on and on. Do we need Food Fight in this form? I don't know. I think most Atarians are going to dig the little shopping center. It's very similar to Splatoon in that way too, where there's this like a Times Square type little place. Ours is a little bit more Midwestern than Times Square, but there is like a little museum downtown little district that's cute, and I think most Atarians will be more interested in looking at all that stuff and playing the old Atari games, and even the old Food Fight, which is a pretty stellar game from back in the day. Alright, well there you have it. We're going to list this. Let's see where we would rank this in the Atari VCS universe. And we can see that right now she's at the bottom of the list of the games that I have reviewed with a 3.0, which is still fair. And to be fair, this is a beta version of the game and not the final version. So if Atari does a lot of miraculous things and makes this thing even better, I will be the first, or at least in the top 200 people on the planet, that will get online and amend their original opinions, and I may affect the score too. But still, for $14.99, it's interesting for an Atari VCS game, and I think it's worth a look-see. Well, I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. This is Funkmaster V. Be sure to remember that we make horror comedy movies at bigandfunkyproductions.com. Please check these out. They're streaming everywhere. We have 4 brand new movies that we've released in the last 2.5 years. Pretty good clip. Also, me and John Stoll II, also known as Silverback with the Atari Network, do a podcast every 2 weeks about Atari. Check that out on this YouTube page. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell because we do it live and we love doing live chats. Big and Funky Productions YouTube page is brought to you by Power T Graphics in Knoxville, which do wonderful signs. They do giant magnets. They do car wraps. Check those guys out because we appreciate the love that they have shown us. Again, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. We will see you on the flippity flip.